I still remember the exact moment it happened, the pain, the cold, and the sound of the door slamming behind her. My mother stood in the hallway, her arms folded tightly across her chest, jaw clenched so hard I thought she might break a tooth. I was curled up on the living room carpet, bleeding, shaking, and begging her for help. But she didn't come closer. She didn't kneel down. She didn't ask what was wrong. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye and spat the words that still burn through my memory like fire. "You're a disgusting little slut. You probably wanted it." I wanted to scream, to ask her what kind of mother says that. But all I could do was cry as the blood soaked through my jeans and stained her favorite white rug. Then, without another word, she turned her back on me and walked out the door. And I never saw her again. But how did we even get here? My name is Ruth Ellen Hartley. I'm 85 years old now, and I've lived a long, quiet life in a little wooden house by the edge of Salt Lake City, Utah. I spend most of my days baking biscuits, watching birds from my window, and reading mystery novels by the fire. Folks around here know me as Granny Ruth. They smile when I pass. But they don't know my story. They don't know what I went through. And honestly, for the longest time, I didn't want anyone to know. But now, at this age, with most of my loved ones gone and my memories creeping back like shadows at night, I realize it's time to tell the truth. It's time to talk about the day everything changed. I was just 17 the day my real father died. It was a slow, bitter kind of grief. He had heart failure. Quiet. Peaceful. But the emptiness left behind wasn't quiet at all. It rang through our house like a church bell stuck on repeat. My mother, Lorraine, changed almost overnight. She stopped making breakfast. She stopped smiling. She stopped hugging me. She said things like, "We can't afford emotions right now, Ruth, and grow up, life doesn't wait." 3 months later, she met Gregory. He came around with shiny teeth, fancy cufflinks, and a brown leather briefcase that clicked every time he opened it. He was tall, clean-cut, and always wore cologne that smelled like pine and winter. I didn't like him. He was too perfect. Too smooth. Too watching. But Mama loved him. They married that fall. At first, Gregory acted like the perfect husband. He brought my mother flowers, took her to dinner, and even gave me a gold locket for my birthday that year. But something about him gave me chills. He always knocked before entering my room, but never waited for me to answer. He complimented my hair a little too much. He watched me set the table like he was studying a painting. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was imagining things. But I wasn't. The first time it happened, I was 18. Mama had gone to visit her sister in Nevada for the weekend. Gregory said he'd stay home with me, just in case I needed anything. I locked my bedroom door that night, but I forgot he had a key. I woke up to the sound of the door clicking open, and then the bed shifted. I still remember the coldness of his breath against my neck as he whispered, "Shh." I didn't scream. Not then. Not until the next morning. Not until I saw the bruises on my thighs. Not until I realized what he had taken from me. When Mama came home, I tried to tell her. I sat at the kitchen table for hours, hands shaking, heart in my throat. She was humming to herself while chopping onions, like nothing had changed. "Mama," I said. She paused. "What is it?" I told her everything. My voice cracked. My chest ached. I was sure she'd drop the knife and wrap her arms around me. But she didn't. She stared at me for a long time, then said, "Don't you dare lie about my husband, Ruth." "I'm not lying," I cried. He touched me. "Mama, he hurt me. Please." But she cut me off with a look I'll never forget. "I've worked too damn hard to have a man in this house. Don't ruin this for us." Weeks passed. Then I missed my period. At first, I thought it was stress. I'd been barely eating, barely sleeping. My hands trembled every time Gregory walked past. But when I fainted while cleaning the attic, Mama dragged me to the doctor. That's when it was confirmed. 6 weeks pregnant. The doctor looked at me with soft eyes. He asked gently, "Is there anything you want to tell me, Miss Hartley?" I wanted to scream the truth. But Mama was standing behind me, arms crossed, her purse clutched like a weapon. I just shook my head and whispered, "No." That night, Gregory didn't say a word. But Mama did. She waited until he left the house, then dragged me into the living room by my arm. "You filthy little thing," she hissed. "You just had to open your legs, didn't you?" "Who is it?" "Ha! Some boy from school." I said nothing. She slapped me. Hard. My lip cracked open. I tasted blood. Then she pushed me. I fell to the floor. The bleeding started shortly after. I begged her to call an ambulance. She didn't. She just stood there, hands on her hips, breathing hard. "You made your bed, Ruth. Now lie in it." Then she walked out, and that's when I knew I was alone. But something happened that night that neither of them expected. I lay on that carpet for what felt like hours. The pain was sharp and pulsing, like a knife being twisted inside me. I remember watching the blood spread, dark and warm, soaking into the threads of the rug I'd vacuumed 1,000 times. It was Mama's favorite, the one she'd saved up for all summer long. Funny how, in the middle of a nightmare, your mind notices the strangest things. I thought I was going to die. I really did. I whispered the Lord's Prayer under my breath, over and over, until the words got tangled with tears. I was 18 years old, pregnant by my stepfather, bleeding, alone, and abandoned. But just when I gave up, when my eyes began to flutter shut and I felt the cold wrap around my limbs like sleep, I heard a knock on the door. Not a soft knock. A pounding, heavy knock. Then a man's voice, deep and firm. "Hello? Is anyone inside?" I couldn't speak. My throat was dry and cracked. But somehow, I managed to let out a groan. It was barely a whisper, but it must have been enough. Because the door burst open. And there he was. His name was Mr. Thomas Keene. He was a postal worker, a veteran, and a father of 2. He had a thick mustache, kind eyes, and a blue raincoat soaked from the sudden downpour outside. He'd been trying to deliver a certified letter when he noticed the house door wasn't fully latched. Something made him check. Maybe fate. Maybe the Lord. He found me curled on the floor. He didn't hesitate. I still remember the way he dropped to his knees and gently scooped me up into his arms like I was made of glass. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" he asked. I couldn't answer. I could only cry. He carried me out into the rain. His mail satchel was still hanging off his shoulder as he shouted for help. A neighbor called an ambulance. The lights blurred through my vision. Sirens screamed. And the last thing I saw before blacking out was Mr. Keene's hand gripping mine, steady and warm. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. There was an 4 in my arm, and the sheets were white and clean. A nurse leaned over me. She was middle-aged, with short gray hair and a voice like honey. "You're safe now, honey. Just rest. You're going to be all right." I blinked slowly, trying to understand. "The baby?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Her smile faded. "I'm so sorry." The grief hit me in waves. Not just for the child I lost, but for everything. For the father I missed. For the mother who chose a man over her daughter. For the girl I used to be before that bedroom door ever opened. They kept me in the hospital for 3 days. Not once did Mama visit. Not once did Gregory call. But Mr. Keene came back. Every day. He brought flowers from his wife's garden. He sat with me while I cried. He even convinced the nurses to let me have an extra blanket, because I always ran cold at night. I don't know what you've been through, he said gently. But no child deserves to be abandoned. You've got someone in your corner now, all right? And for the first time in years, I believed it. When they finally discharged me, I had nowhere to go. The social worker asked if I had any family who could take me in. I gave her my grandmother's number in Oregon, but she'd passed 2 years earlier. Anyone else? The woman asked kindly. I shook my head. Then quietly I said, "Can I just stay at a shelter?" She frowned. That's when Mr. Keene stepped forward again. "My wife and I have a guest room. Just until you get back on your feet. We've got girls your age. You don't have to be afraid." It wasn't charity. It was grace. Living with the Keenes felt like breathing clean air for the first time. His wife, Martha, made oatmeal cookies from scratch. Their daughters let me borrow clothes and helped me comb my hair. Their golden retriever, Button, slept at my feet every night like a little furry guardian. They didn't ask questions. They didn't push me to tell my story. They just let me be. And slowly, I started to heal. But that peace didn't last long. One afternoon, about 2 weeks later, while helping Martha fold laundry, I looked up to see a black car pull into the driveway. The man who stepped out made my blood freeze. Gregory. He was standing on the lawn in his gray suit and polished shoes like nothing ever happened. Smiling. Calm. "I've come to take my daughter home," he told Mrs. Keene. Before she could answer, I stepped onto the porch. My knees shook. But my voice didn't. "I'm not your daughter," I said. His smile twitched. "She's just a little confused," he told them. "We're family." Mrs. Keene didn't flinch. "If you don't leave this property right now," she said, "I'm calling the police." He didn't expect that. His eyes narrowed. Then he said something that made my heart drop. "You think you're safe here? You think this little pity party will protect you forever?" He stepped closer and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "I know what you did, and you'll regret talking." Then he walked away. Mrs. Keene filed a restraining order that same evening. The police took a statement from me, but without solid evidence, there wasn't much they could do. Still, something shifted in me that day. I wasn't a broken girl on the floor anymore. I was standing. I was seen. And Gregory knew it. But what none of us realized, what none of us could have known, was that Gregory hadn't come alone that day. Someone was in the car with him, watching, recording, waiting. And what that person did next would unravel everything. 3 days after Gregory showed up on the Keenes' lawn, the doorbell rang again. It was early evening. The sun was just beginning to dip behind the Utah mountains, casting long shadows across the porch. I had just finished helping Martha with dinner, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans, her signature, and was pouring sweet tea into tall glasses when the bell rang. I didn't even flinch this time. Not anymore. But when Mr. Keene opened the door, it wasn't Gregory standing there. It was a woman. She was tall, slender, and wrapped in a trench coat. Red hair. Sharp cheekbones. Sunglasses, even though the sun was nearly gone. She pulled them off and said flatly, "I need to speak to Ruth Hartley. Privately." Mr. Keene turned to me. "It's all right," I said. My voice was steady. My hands weren't shaking. "Let her in." The woman stepped inside, looked around the cozy living room, and let out a slow breath. Then she handed me a small envelope and said 4 words that stopped my heart. "I know the truth." Her name was Samantha Givens. She was Gregory's secretary. Had been for 5 years. But she wasn't loyal to him anymore. She sat down on the couch and explained everything. How she'd seen Gregory take strange calls. How she'd found gifts he was sending to unknown addresses. How he started acting nervous and aggressive whenever she asked too many questions. And most of all, how, just 2 weeks before, she had followed him.
I saw him leave the house the night your mother was away, she said, voice low.
He went into your room. I didn't know what I was seeing at first.
I told myself it was nothing.
She shook her head slowly, eyes filled with guilt. But it wasn't nothing, and I didn't act. That night, she decided to protect herself, just in case. So the next time he planned to visit me while Mama was away, she followed again. Only this time, she filmed it. My stomach turned. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to curl up and forget I ever met Gregory in the first place. But I didn't.
I asked, "Why are you telling me this now?"
Samantha sighed. Because he came back to the office this week. He said some things about getting rid of problems,
about finishing what he started.
He didn't name you, but I knew. I couldn't live with myself if I stayed quiet any longer. She handed me a flash drive. It's all here, and I'm willing to testify. I looked down at the small silver stick in my hand. My entire nightmare, captured on film. Proof. At last. The Keens and I drove straight to the police station that night. The detective on duty, Officer Hale, listened quietly as I explained everything. Samantha showed her ID, handed over the drive, and gave a full statement. Then, we waited. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Finally, Hale came back with a face that said everything. We've seen enough, he said. We'll be issuing a warrant for Gregory Stone's arrest by morning. He paused. But there's something else. He slid a file across the desk. A police report. From 3 years ago. It was from a town just a few miles away. Another girl. 17. Same last name. Stone. No, he said. Her mother married Gregory right after your mom passed away. The girl filed a complaint, but her mother refused to believe her. Said the girl was mentally unstable. My throat went dry, and she ran away a month later. Never found. I barely slept that night. I sat by the window, rocking slowly, watching the stars, wondering how many other girls Gregory had hurt. Wondering if that girl, Sarah, was still out there. Wondering how close I had come to being just another unsolved case. By morning, the news had spread. Local businessman arrested in abuse case. More victims expected to come forward. Gregory's mugshot flashed across the screen. He didn't look smug anymore. His hair was messy. His eyes were red. And for the first time, he looked like what he truly was. A predator. But Mama still hadn't called. Not once. Even with the news everywhere, even with my name being mentioned on the radio, even with Samantha's confession and the hospital's report, nothing. Not a word from her. And part of me wanted that more than anything. I didn't want an apology. I just wanted her to say she knew. That evening, Martha and I were in the garden trimming roses when the phone rang. She picked it up. Ruth, it's for you. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked inside. My heart pounded with every step. I picked up the receiver.
Hello.
There was a long pause. Then a voice. Familiar. Bitter. Cold.
You ruined everything.
It was my mother. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask about the hospital or the police or what I'd been through. She just blamed me. I gave you a home, she snapped. I gave you a second chance after your father died. And this is how you repay me? By dragging my husband through the mud? What kind of daughter are you? I said nothing. I just let her speak. Because in that moment I realized she wasn't my mother anymore. She had chosen him. Again. even with the truth laid bare, even with the footage, even with the blood. And that broke something in me that would never be fixed. Then she said it. You think you're safe? You think those Keens will keep you forever? You'll always be a problem, Ruth. Always. And no one wants to keep a problem around. Then she hung up. Just like that. Click. Silence. But that wasn't the end of it. Because 2 days later, a strange package arrived at the Keens' front door. There was no return address. Just my name. And inside was a baby bracelet with the name Lily engraved in gold. My hands trembled because that's the name I had picked. And I had never told anyone, not even the nurses, not even the Keens, which meant someone had been listening, and they weren't finished. I dropped the bracelet as if it had burned my skin. It bounced once on the table, the delicate golden chain catching the light before it settled with a soft clink. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't look away. Lily. The name shimmered on the tiny charm. The name I whispered in my hospital bed, alone, when no one else could hear. The name of the daughter I lost. The name I never said aloud. And yet someone knew. Someone had carved it into gold. Mrs. Keen rushed into the room when she saw the look on my face. Ruth? What's wrong, sweetheart? I pointed to the box with a shaky finger. She read the name, and her eyes went wide. Did you ever mention this to anyone? Ever? I shook my head slowly. No one knows. She called her husband. Mr. Keen examined the package carefully. No prints. No smudges. No postage markings. It hadn't come through the mail. Someone dropped this off by hand, he said grimly. Someone who knows you. Knows your past. He looked at me. Ruth, is there anyone else? Anyone who might have heard you say that name? I shook my head again, lips trembling. Only Gregory. The police took the package for fingerprinting. They started combing surveillance footage from nearby homes and street corners. But nothing came up. It was as if the bracelet had simply appeared from thin air. And for the first time since that day on the carpet, I felt truly unsafe again. The Keens set up extra locks on the doors. Mr. Keen started driving me to and from my part-time job at the library, even though it was just 3 blocks away. Martha kept her phone on at all times, even when she was asleep. We were on edge, waiting, watching, wondering, and still nothing happened. For 3 weeks it was silent, until the garden roses began to wilt. It started subtly, a few petals browning early, a leaf here or there curling at the edges. But then the soil turned sour. Overnight, the entire front yard began to die. Not just the roses, but the grass, the bushes, even the trees. Mr. Keen dug into the earth and found it thick and oily. A strong chemical smell burned our noses. He called the environmental officers. They tested the soil. And what they found shocked even the police. Traces of chloropicrin, an illegal pesticide, extremely toxic. Someone poisoned your garden, the officer said. And it wasn't random. This was personal. I stood on the porch, staring at the crumbling stems and rotting petals. Gregory's words rang in my ears. You think you're safe here? That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the window. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't rest. I couldn't live like this, waiting for the next shadow to crawl out of the dark. So I made a decision. I wrote a letter to the district attorney. Not just a statement, but a full confession. Everything. What Gregory did. What Mama did. What I lost. I even included the name. Lily. I told them the name was sacred to me. That it proved he'd been watching. That it was the key to showing this was more than just abuse, It was obsession. Martha mailed it for me. 3 days later, I received a call from Officer Hale. "Ruth," he said, "we believe Gregory might have hired someone. We found a number of cash withdrawals from his account. Same week the bracelet was delivered and the soil was poisoned." He paused. "And someone else just came forward." It was a woman named Elena, a motel cleaner. She'd seen a man matching Gregory's description handing a wad of cash to a biker-looking guy in the motel parking lot. She didn't think much of it until she saw Gregory's face on the news. She called the tip line. The biker was arrested 2 nights later. He refused to speak at first, but after a plea deal, he told everything. Gregory had offered him $5,000 to scare the girl. No physical harm, just emotional chaos. Drop a gift, ruin her garden, make her know she's never alone. My knees gave out when I heard that. Even from jail, even under investigation, Gregory was still trying to haunt me, still trying to control me. But it didn't stop there. Because during the biker's interrogation, he slipped and mentioned a storage unit. Said Gregory told him, "If anything happens, just dump the rest at the unit." Police obtained a warrant. They opened it, and what they found inside made my stomach twist. Photos, hundreds of them, of me, taken from bushes, from across streets, from windows. Some old, before the hospital, some recent. There were drawings, too. Little sketches of a baby crib, a mobile, a onesie with the name Lily on it, even a newspaper clipping about my father's funeral, with "Father Weak, Daughter Weaker" scribbled across it in red ink. They said it was one of the most disturbing evidence rooms they'd ever seen. And just like that, the case shifted. It was no longer just assault. It became stalking, conspiracy, psychological terrorism. The district attorney moved to reclassify Gregory as a high-risk offender. The judge granted it. His bail was revoked. He would stay in prison until the trial. But that didn't make me feel safe. Not yet. Because Mama still hadn't spoken. Not to me. Not to the police. Not to the press. She'd vanished from her job. Her phone was disconnected. Her house was empty. Gone. Like a ghost. But I knew she wasn't gone for good. And I was right. Because the next envelope that arrived wasn't from the police. It wasn't from the court. It was handwritten. No stamp. Just slipped under the door. And when I opened it, it was from her. Only 3 words. "You'll regret this." I stared at those 3 words written in my mother's handwriting, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. "You'll regret this." The paper trembled in my hands. There was no greeting, no explanation, no apology, just a threat from the woman who gave birth to me, the woman who had walked away while I bled on her living room carpet. Martha stepped into the hallway just then, her eyes immediately catching the pale shade on my face. "Ruth? What is it?" I held the note out to her. She read it in silence, jaw tightening with every second. "This woman," she muttered under her breath. "She's completely unhinged." Mr. Keene called Officer Hale right away. A new report was filed. Patrols were increased around the house. Cameras were installed on every corner of the porch, roof, and driveway. But none of it eased the tightness in my chest. Because threats from Gregory were expected. But this betrayal from my own mother, was something else entirely. I barely slept that week. Every creak in the floorboard made me jump. Every passing car made my breath hitch. I kept the curtains shut. My bedroom light stayed off. I even stopped walking to the library altogether. Martha understood. She didn't ask me to explain. But Mr. Keene said something that stuck with me. If someone's trying this hard to scare you, Ruth, it means they're scared of you. I hadn't thought of it that way. But it made sense. They were scared. Scared because I wasn't the broken little girl anymore. Scared because I had found my voice. Scared because, for the first time ever, I was fighting back. 2 days later, we got a surprise call from the district attorney's office. The trial date had been moved up. Thanks to the new evidence from the storage unit and the testimony from Samantha, Elena, and the biker, the judge was ready to proceed. Court was scheduled for a month later. I would testify. Gregory would be present. And if convicted, he'd face over 20 years behind bars. But there was one more twist. The prosecution planned to subpoena my mother. Not as a defendant, yet, but as a witness. They wanted to expose the years of cover-up, the negligence, the abuse she enabled. They said her silence could no longer be protected. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted her to finally face consequences. But the other part still wanted my mom. Even after everything. Even after she called me a slut. Even after she left me bleeding. Even after the threat. I still wanted the woman who used to braid my hair and sing hymns at night. But that woman didn't exist anymore. And I needed to stop searching for her. A week before the trial, Martha and I were in the kitchen when she paused while stirring her famous chicken pot pie. "There's something I haven't told you," she said gently. "About your mother." I froze. "What is it?" She set the spoon down and leaned against the counter. "Back when you were in the hospital, before we took you in, she came by. Once. My heart stopped. She asked to see you. Said she'd changed her mind. That she was ready to talk. But when the nurse told her you'd lost the baby, she didn't cry. She didn't ask how you were doing." Martha's eyes clouded. She just muttered, "Well, that solves one problem," and walked out. I sat down slowly. It felt like my chest had been cracked open again. I had always hoped that maybe, just maybe, she'd tried. That she'd struggled with guilt. That she'd shown up and been turned away. But no. She had come. And left. Because my pain was a problem she wanted gone. 3 days before the trial, a white car appeared at the end of the street. It parked 2 houses down and didn't move for hours. Mr. Keene called the police, who questioned the driver. He claimed to be a freelance reporter. Said he heard about the case and was trying to get a raw angle before the media storm. He was warned and sent away. But that night, our mailbox was stuffed full of old photos. Not recent ones. Childhood photos. Of me. At dance class. At the zoo. Sitting on my mother's lap. Smiling. Each one had red ink scribbled across the back. Family doesn't betray family. Blood is thicker than courtrooms. You don't get to rewrite history. I felt sick. Martha hugged me tighter than ever that night. But the nightmares came anyway. The morning of the trial, I wore a navy blue dress and combed my hair into a soft bun. I looked in the mirror for a long time. My face had lines now, deep ones, but my eyes were clearer than ever. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Mr. and Mrs. Keene came with me. Samantha sat 2 rows behind, clutching a notepad with trembling fingers. Elena showed up too, wearing a hoodie and jeans, nervously chewing gum. The courtroom was quiet when they brought Gregory in. He wore a wrinkled suit. He looked smaller somehow. We didn't speak. He wouldn't look at me. But I looked at him. I wanted him to see I wasn't broken. Not anymore. The trial began. The prosecution laid out the evidence, the medical report, the testimony from Samantha, the biker's statement, the storage unit photos. Then it was my turn. I stood, swore an oath, and told everything. My voice only cracked once, when I said Lily's name. The courtroom went still. No one moved. No one blinked. When I finished, I turned toward the defense table. Gregory wouldn't meet my eyes. Coward. Then came the final witness. The courtroom door opened, and my mother walked in. Her hair was gray now, tied in a tight bun. She wore a beige coat and dark lipstick. No smile. No tears. She took the stand, raised her hand, swore the oath. The prosecutor asked, "Did your daughter tell you she had been harmed by your husband?" She paused. Then, in a voice like cold steel, she said, "Yes."
And I didn't believe her.
Murmurs swept through the courtroom. The prosecutor continued, "Why not?" My mother shrugged. She always had a wild imagination, and I needed stability. After her father died, we were struggling.
I did what I had to do.
My jaw clenched. No remorse. None. Just excuses. "Do you regret your choices?" the prosecutor asked. She blinked once and said, "Not really." But the final blow came when they showed her the bracelet, the one that said Lily. Her face changed, and for the first time since that day in our living room, she looked afraid. My mother stared at the bracelet like it was a ghost. The tiny gold charm with Lily etched into it gleamed under the courtroom lights. It was innocent, delicate, something meant for love, not war. Her fingers twitched. The prosecutor didn't miss a beat. "Do you recognize this?" She hesitated. For the first time, there was a crack in her perfect mask. It looks like a baby's bracelet," she said, voice suddenly quieter. "But I don't know what this has to do with anything." The prosecutor raised a brow. "Your daughter says this was the name she chose for her baby. A name she never spoke aloud. And yet, someone had it engraved and delivered to her without postage. How do you explain that?" My mother's eyes flicked to me for just a second, just long enough to register my face. But I wasn't crying. I wasn't afraid. She looked away again.
"I have no idea," she muttered.
The prosecutor pressed harder. "You don't know how your daughter's private whispered name ended up in a package on her doorstep? Along with poison in the garden? With hundreds of stalker photos found in a storage unit leased by your husband?" "I wasn't involved," she snapped. "I wasn't part of that. I didn't know about any of it." "But you did know she was pregnant, didn't you?" Her jaw tightened. "Yes."
"And you called her a slut."
She flinched. The judge raised his hand. "Let's keep the tone in check, counselor." The prosecutor nodded.
Then he said, gently, "Mrs. Stone, do you believe your daughter was telling the truth?"
The room went silent. Tears stung the corners of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. My mother swallowed. And for the first time in decades, she didn't answer right away. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know what I believe anymore." Court recessed for lunch, but I couldn't eat. I sat on the cold wooden bench outside the courthouse, staring at the fountain in the middle of the square. Water gushed out like nothing had changed in the world. But everything had. Martha sat beside me, holding my hand tightly. "I'm proud of you," she said. I didn't say anything, because deep down, I wasn't sure if I felt strong or just tired. So tired. The verdict didn't come that day. The trial extended into the next week. More evidence, more witnesses, more moments where I had to relive everything I wanted to forget. But then, on the seventh day, the jury returned. We all stood. The courtroom held its breath. The foreman read aloud. On the count of first-degree sexual assault, guilty. On the count of endangerment of a minor, guilty. On the count of stalking and psychological terror, guilty. And finally, on the count of criminal conspiracy and attempted intimidation, guilty. A gasp swept through the room. Gregory's face went white. His lawyer dropped his pen. But me. I just closed my eyes. Because that word, guilty, wasn't just about him. It was about me, too. It meant I was no longer the liar. I was no longer the problem. I was free. He was sentenced to 28 years without parole. When the gavel slammed, my knees buckled. But Mr. Keene was there. He caught me. Martha kissed my forehead. Samantha sobbed into her scarf. Elena exhaled a breath she'd held for too long. It was over. Well, almost. Because after the trial, I stepped outside into the cool air and found my mother sitting alone on a bench under a tree. No coat. No purse. Just her and the breeze. I didn't want to go to her. But I did. I had to. She didn't look up when I stopped beside her. She just said, "You destroyed everything." I said nothing. Then she whispered, "You were supposed to protect me. Not him. Me." I blinked. "Protect you?" I asked. "You watched me bleed on your carpet." Her shoulders shook. "He said he'd leave me. Said he'd take everything. I didn't know what to do." I stood there in silence, then said, "You could have picked me. Once. Just once. You could have picked your daughter." Finally, she looked up. And for the first time, her eyes were red. I was scared. I was too. She nodded, slowly. And then I walked away. It's been decades since that day. I'm 85 now. The Keenes are gone. Buried in the churchyard on 3rd Street. Their daughters still visit me sometimes, bring flowers and fudge and stories of their own kids. I never married. Never tried again. But I planted a rose garden. It blooms every spring. Soft pink. Lush and full. And in the middle of it, beneath the tallest rosebush, there's a small stone. It reads, "Lily Hartley. Never born. Never forgotten." Some nights, I sit on the porch and look at the stars. I wonder what she would have been like. Her laugh. Her eyes. Her favorite song. And I wonder if Mama ever visits my father's grave and tells him the truth. Probably not. But that's okay. Because I know what happened. I know who I am. And I survived. Even when they tried to silence me. I survived. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when no one else would? Tap the like button to honor survivors who found their voice. And subscribe for more true stories that break the silence and bring healing. Because sometimes the truth hurts, but telling it heals.